Hi everyone, welcome to session 6.1. We're going to start in module 6 and we'll take a look at some of the features with multiple worksheets, which are called a worksheet group. So I know it looks complicated if you look at the visual overview on 328 and 329, but it's actually really simple. So let's say I'm going to start a bunch of sheets and I want to have a consistent look across them. So I'll just create a few new sheets. I had a few before, so my sheets are called sheet 1, sheet 4, and sheet 5. Okay, so I have three sheets. Basically, I could press shift and select them, or I could press control and select them individually, and you'll notice that all the sheets are now highlighted together, right? Once they are, when I type something in, and I edit, it doesn't really matter what it is, I could put it in anything. Let's see what's going on here. There we go. Okay, so I'm doing a few changes and I want the header to be consistent across all my sheets. Because they're all selected, once I go to a different sheet, they're all there, right? So this could really help you if you have, let's say, um, 12 months that you're trying to make a sheet for, and each month is going to have the same categories, the same kind of data, but the numbers will be different. Then you can create them all in a grouped workbook. They'll all be the same, and then you can go and edit them individually. So here I have, I'll put in test 1. Okay, and then when I go to the second sheet, that's not there. So the robot factory part is the same on every sheet, but this is not. And if I want to edit them all again, all I do is click on all the sheets, and then I'm able to, let's say, change the color, and then go back and forward, and it's still the same on every sheet, right? So basically, this is a way to, if I'm putting in information, to quickly edit this between sheets. I'll show you another example. So let's say I type in Sunday, and we'll drag down. Okay, so I'm putting in my list of dates, and I could put in a list of numbers. Okay, and then when I click on the next sheet, all that data is still there, and I'm able to change it. Like for example, here, let's do AutoSum, and then drag this across, and bold it. Okay, so that will only show up on the one sheet and not the others, because I only made the changes to the sheet. Whereas if I go and select them all, now when I make changes, it will affect all the sheets. Okay, and the same thing applies to formulas. So if I have all the sheets selected and I type in a formula, let's say we'll do AutoSum. Okay, so this formula that gave me the 210 will then be copied onto, oh, I had that from before. It will then be copied onto each version of the sheet. Okay, except I have it in bold on one and not the other, and I could just easily select all three, select the cell, select all three sheets, bold it, and then we should have it bold on every other sheet. There we go. Okay, so we're actually zipping along. Let's take a look at page 337. So I'm able to, if I want to make a copy just of this sheet, I could right click it and go to where it says move or copy. I'll say create a copy and let's say move it to the end. And that would create sheet 1, number 2, right? So it would look the same as sheet 1, but it would basically be the same idea. Now it's possible to do this a much easier way, like you could see on page 337. So I'm going to delete that one. I'll go to sheet 1 again. I'm going to press Control on the keyboard and just drag to the right. Okay, and when I do, you'll notice that the paper turns into a little paper with a plus. I just let go, and it creates a copy. Okay, so I just press Control, drag to the right, and it does it again. So I'm able to very quickly create a bunch of these sheets that copy off each other. So if I want to make a copy of sheet 4, I just click it, press Control, and drag to the right. And that will make a copy of sheet 4. Okay, so let's take a look at the example on page 338, 339, where they have a summary sheet. Okay, so I'm just going to rename our sheets so we can all be on the same page. I'll just call it Q1, Q2, Q3. Okay, and then we'll make a summary sheet. Okay, now if I'm going to do this and I want to have the same formula as this, I'm going to have to do a lot of copying and pasting. So instead, why don't we grab Q3, I'll press Control, drag over to the side, and we'll have a copy of Q3, and then I'll change this to summary. Okay, so we have all the numbers. We don't need these numbers, but these are, we'll get rid of these numbers. We will keep the days though, and I'll stretch this out a little. Okay, and what we're going to do is, in each of these cells, we're going to have the total from Q1, Q2, Q3 added together. And we're going to do that by day. So what do? We've talked about this in class and in other videos. We just want to make a reference from another page, right? From another sheet. So we press equals, telling Excel we're going to put in a formula. And we can go to Q1 and grab this range. And you'll notice that in the reference it now says equals, and in quotes it says Q1, telling us what page to go to, with an exclamation point, and that tells us the range. Okay, so we have equals, and in this case, actually, why don't we do sum? Okay, and then we'll put in a comma. We'll go to Q2 and grab that range and put in a comma, and we'll go 3 and we'll put in a comma. Okay, so basically, this is going to add together on sheet Q1 the range B3 to E3, on Q2 the same range, and on Q3 the same range. So I hit enter, and it gives me 24. And the 24 will add together those 3 ranges from the 3 different sheets, right? But you'll notice that it says the sheet name in each one telling me where to go to find it. Okay, now if I drag down, it will give me the same idea. So instead of B3 to E3, I'll have B4 to E4. Right? So I could just drag all the way down, and this will bring in the numbers from all the different sheets. It will summarize each one of these rows with the other sheets. Okay, so just a quick note about the apostrophes that you see, the quotes that you see in here. If there's a space in the name, so this said quarter space 1, you would have to have the quotes. If you don't necessarily need these quotes before the Q1 and after, but they just put it in by default. So you could either have those in or not. This might make a difference. You could read more about that on page 338. Okay, so our next thing that we're going to talk about is 3D references, which you could look at from page 342 to 345, basically. And it's basically the ideas behind a 3D reference is what we did here. Okay, so we will take information from each sheet and put them together. But instead of putting in the name of each sheet and the cell reference, we could do that in one step. So let's take an example. We'll group together Q1 to Q3. Okay, and I'll put in equals sum. And then we'll put in single quote Q1 colon Q3, basically looking at all the different sheets that we have. And then I put in an exclamation mark telling you that's a sheet. And then I'll grab these 4 numbers. So if we did this right, instead of giving us 8, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, it will actually add up the numbers from all the different sheets together. So let's take a look, and it gives us 24. The 24, you'll note, is the same as this 24, right, that we had originally, but instead of adding each sheet separately, we created a 3D reference, basically putting in this range B3 to E3 on all sheets between Q1 and Q3, add them together. So we basically skipped a couple steps in order to make this reference. Okay, so that's how 3D referencing works. But remember, in order to use it, all the sheets have to be selected so it copies the formula evenly between, it knows which ones it's grabbing. Okay, we could delete this from the other sheets. Okay, and then we have our one 3D reference that connects all 3. And then we could cut this, for example, and paste it somewhere else. Okay, it's still going to work, and it's going to have the same information. Okay, and we'll end this section with printing a worksheet group on page 345 to 347. So take a look through that, and it basically goes back to the printing features we talked about in Module 2, and we'll go from there. Have a great one.